Was so detail oriented. I thought there was a really academic deconstruction, not just of his academia and his science, but I thought of his family life and his personal life that I thought contributed to sort of understanding why his pursuit in this field in physics and atoms were so impactful and influential to who he was as an overall person. Besides the pursuit scientifically, I thought that the piece really worked well, not just in sort of reflecting his life over time, but the implications of his work over time. And I thought that all the subjects really contributed a lot of interesting tidbits about not just his life, but sort of how that the core of his discoveries really sort of have reverberated throughout science and really human history since they were discovered. So I thought the piece really was a great testament to the man as to Neil as a man and as a scientist. And I thought that the piece had a good way of sort of making a dense topic easy to get into. I think these kind of pieces work well when it's able to sort of draw in an audience that might not necessarily already be interested in the subject matter. And I thought that the piece had a good job of doing that by pacing and editing and sort of having a production value quality that really made it a seamless and well executed piece.
I feel like I should know this from school. I did not realize this was who discovered splitting the atom. And I think when you hear, at least when I hear about any kind of science with that kind of stuff, and it's probably because of the media at the moment, I think Oppenheimer and that work. So um, I think this is really topical to be seeing right now as Oppenheimer's on the way, and I think these two correlate um, with what they're talking about. So I think that's really beneficial to this. But I also think how informative it is, and going into this person that you don't initially think of is really great, really factual. It flowed really well. I think you hit a lot of really important points in this is his life, Neil's life, as well as his career, and I think that's always really great. It definitely made me more interested in this subject and this person.
I loved the use of the old black and white footage and the photographs that they had put in, combined with the voiceover and then the live interviews that they were doing with the grandchildren and, other physicists and students and things like that. I think that that was really amazing. They balanced their sound well between the voiceover and the interviews. I loved the voiceover. Who they chose for that did a really great job. It was very warm. It flowed really well. Thank you so much for the subtitles, because I would have been so bummed if there wasn't subtitles in this, because it was really, really interesting. Filmography wise, I think they did this beyond justice. They went above and beyond with this film. I loved hearing the stories about when Niels went to America and the experiences there, and his cleverness when he was having the meeting with the Russian agent, that he decided to bring a couple of family members with him, and they said one was in the next room with a gun. I mean, it's these kind of things that are just, they're gems. They're gems of history that we don't rightly know about.
But we also see that, he does influence the likes of people of Einstein. He comes from that same generation. And so it's really cool to see, and it's not presented in such that way. They easily could have had this moment here where they were like, he knows Einstein and all that stuff. That is a way that I feel like the everyday person would have been able to latch on and identify with. But I like how we kind of eventually lean into this dirty little secret in a sense, and we find this connection later on. And what's so nice is it does kind of catch up to today, and it does show off, how these physics can influence technology and change technology in ways that we haven't even seen before, because it's never been done. And so it kind of shows this sense of science has such an impact on the making of history, and do scientists have this systemic responsibility to do better, as we find that human responsibility is the reason why we end up in these phases of recovering from destruction.
And introspecting about scientists' roles in humankind, technological advancements. Niels Bohr's family legacy, his friendships, his values, all put together nicely in describing this highly talented and down-to-earth individual. His concerns about the future of the species, who gets to govern and how. The question they pose about the scientists' accountability for misuse of their inventions, it's very thought-provoking. He was a trailblazer in setting expectations for worldwide collaboration and making science accessible to everyone, starting with his children and grandchildren. It was lovely to see his descendants and contemporary scientists and doctors and teachers and other people involved with his life talked about him too, as they remember him fondly.
But it was really a great tribute. It showed his family in it. It showed the contributions to science, that he was essentially the father of the atom. It was everything you needed. It kind of covered everything about who he was as a person and who he was as a scientist. It's a great moment in history, and the fact that somebody took the time to compile all the facts about him and not just one or the other, because they could have just gone through the science route or just the person, but they really showed it's all of who he was and didn't focus on just his family or his contributions. And it made it a really well-rounded documentary because it shows you exactly who he was and how much even the people in his life loved him, how much the people in the science community still respect him. And he showed what a scientist really is, because he came around before World War II. He was working quite often as a scientist before then, because I think they said 1930, and so he was around before the times of like Joseph Mengele, where Mengele corrupted science. They showed that Niels Bohr was an authentic, true scientist and used stuff to further science for the good of humanity.
I've loved learning more about this man's life, learning who he was as a person, while also learning how he contributed towards the advancement of science, while also learning the repercussions of said advancements as it led to one of the biggest wars in human history, World War II. Learning how all of these pieces and cogs fit together to reach that point